What is going on, everyone? In today's episode, we are starting peppers. It is late February, and that means if you have not yet started your peppers, you should, because they take a while to grow. And in today's episode, we're going to talk all about the secrets, the tips to success when starting pepper seeds. Let's go. The first tip to having success when starting peppers has to do with your soil. It is so important to start with a loose, well-draining potting mix. Now, we have sifted this potting mix down to 1/4 inch. That means that we're going to have just the finest texture possible. You really don't want any large chunks. You don't want any large stones or twigs, anything that's going to take up a lot of space in your trays. But you also want something that's going to hold on to water well. Peppers are incredibly finicky with root rot. And that's going to kind of be the underlying message that we're going to be conveying, is that peppers can be fairly easy to grow if you can prevent root rot. And the first way that you can prevent root rot is by selecting a really high quality potting mix or seed starting mix, or making one yourself. We're using Pro Mix. We happen to carry this over at MIgardener.com. It's what we start all of our seeds in, but we also make our own as well. We take a block of coconut husk fiber, basically. We hydrate it. We add in perlite, we add in vermiculite, we add in a slow, well-balanced all-purpose fertilizer, Trifecta Plus, and we make our own as well. Both are great, but you want to have something that's going to be loose and well-draining, but not hold on to too much water, because that is a big reason why your peppers are going to start to rot. So we're going to get this soil loaded into these trays here, and that leads me to the next tip for success when starting peppers, is that you're actually going to have better luck starting peppers with less soil. Seems crazy to say, but these cells here, if you notice, these cells are really small. And that means that we're going to have less soil for the peppers to grow in, which might seem like a bad thing. But when starting seeds indoors, all this soil holds on to water. And the more water it holds on to equals a higher chance of root rot. And so it's very important that we start with only enough soil that we actually need to get the roots growing. After that, we can always transplant later, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to throw them in a big old pot, because that extra soil in the pot is going to take a lot longer to dry out, and that can lead to root rot. My third tip for success for you is a heat mat. When it comes to a heat mat, they are so invaluable to helping start pepper seeds. Now, in an unheated garage or in a basement or even out in a greenhouse, we have temperature fluctuations that can range anywhere from 40 degrees at night all the way up to 85, 90 degrees during the day. And the heat mat helps to give consistent temperature. That's what seeds need to germinate. Now, some seeds, like lettuce seed, you don't need to throw them on a heat mat. It's not necessary. They like cool soil to germinate. They like cool soil to grow. It's not the right tool for the right job. But when it comes to pepper seeds like a temperature range between 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit for consistent germination. And that's a big reason why gardeners don't have success starting pepper seeds, or they write in and say, my pepper seeds are taking 3 to 5, 6 weeks to germinate. That doesn't seem right. And I reply back and I say, no, that doesn't seem right. Do you have them on a heat mat? Are you giving them consistent temperature? And the answer is generally no. But if you throw them on a heat mat, give them consistent temperature around 70 to 85 degrees, you should find that your peppers should germinate within about 1 to maybe 3 weeks or so on the high end. And that will really help to maximize your success, because the longer your seeds are in the ground, the longer they have to rot in the soil and lower your germination rates. Another tip when starting your seeds with a heat mat is you want to make sure that if your heat mat does not have really consistent heating, to throw a piece of cardboard over top. I find that corrugated cardboard, if you have the corrugated cardboard running horizontally or vertically to the heat mat, those little chambers of air, those little pockets of air in between the sheets of cardboard can actually help transport that warm air and give you a lot more consistent ambient temperature warming up through the soil. But these MIgardener heat mats are awesome. They're very consistent. And I find that I don't have very many problems with heating consistently. Now, another tip for success, start early. I cannot stress that enough. If you do not start your seeds early, you're going to have a plant that is undersized and underproducing what it could be. That's because peppers take a long time to grow. Now, yes, that is true that their maturity date is only about 75 to 85 days, but it takes them a long time to produce and to ripen. And with tomatoes, 75 to 85 days, you could have fully ripe tomatoes. But with peppers, you have a fruit that is producing, viable seeds. By all accounts, it's matured, but it's not as productive as it could be had you started it earlier. Now, we typically start our stuff in late February. We start our peppers in late February. It gives us a lot of time to get the plant up and growing. But in the past, we've started our seeds in early April, and I just find that productivity and the amount of harvest we get from our plants is really decreased if we start them later. The next tip for success I've got for you is watering. Now, watering is probably, in my opinion, one of the largest reasons why you're going to struggle starting peppers from seed. Peppers are super prone to root rot, but they're also prone to damping off and a whole host of other issues that can happen. And a lot of those issues, they're centered around watering. If you overwater your seeds, you're going to struggle. Plain and simple. Peppers like dry, arid environments. They also like it to be warm as well. So if the heat mat is providing the warmth, or the ambient air is warm and you're not using a heat mat, that's only half the equation. They like it warm, but they also like it dry. Now, how dry? This is something that always comes up because it is kind of an interesting question. Well, dry, like you could have this soil right here in the corner, right? This is dry. Like this is dusty and dry. Like that's super dry. But then you could have a scenario that, like if we were to add a bunch of water to this and you could wring water out, that would be wet, right? Well, how dry is too dry? Well, again, I go by feel, I go by look. You see, we can tell that the color of this soil is dry. And we can tell that the soil has some moisture in it because it's gotten darker, but it's noticeably damp to the touch. But we can't wring any water out of it. There's no way we could wring water out of this. But if we were to squeeze it, it would kind of hold its shape, right? It would hold its shape. It's because there's some moisture in it. It's also a little bit darker as well, showing that there is some moisture in it. That's the type of moisture that we're looking for. Now seeds, all seeds, not just pepper seeds, they like consistent moisture. Consistent moisture is so important. It's just as important as consistent temperature. If your soil goes dry and then it's wet and then it's dry and it's wet, it goes on, it kind of whipsaws them back and forth and they have a really hard time adapting to that soil. And you'll find that your germination rate, if it doesn't take a long time, won't happen at all. It's going to be very inconsistent. And it's just because they're trying to adapt to that changing soil moisture. So what I find is consistent moisture, not too wet, not too dry. It should feel like, and I've used this example in the past, it feels like a damp dish sponge. If you have used a dish sponge to clean some dishes, wrung all the water out, every last drop, you could still tell that it's damp to the touch. If you wiped your hands on it or you wiped down a table, it would be able to leave a little bit of moisture behind, but you couldn't wring any water out of it. That's that dampness that we're looking for. That's the level of moisture we are looking for in our soil, and that's the level of moisture we need consistently to have good germination. And that, I think, like I said, is probably the most important thing. Not just getting the moisture right, but making sure we do it consistently as well. In these small trays here, the trays can dry out very quickly, so you want to keep an eye on them. A humidity dome is something that gardeners turn to. A humidity dome helps to reduce how much evaporation happens, but I do find that for beginning gardeners, it can cause some problems because it can trap sometimes excess water in your soil. And until you really realize how to use a humidity dome correctly, I personally wouldn't use it. I would just mist them with a little spray bottle until you start to see sprouts. Now, one final little note here that I've got that's going to help you. I personally think it helped because it helped me a lot. And that is only starting one to two seeds per cell. Now, as a beginning gardener, I loaded the seeds into the cells thinking that I was just going to thin and that'd be fine. But what I find is that oftentimes when you start more than 2 or 3 pepper seeds, peppers really do not like competition. And I find often that with peppers, tomatoes aren't this case. Lettuce is not like this. But peppers are a little unique in that if they have too much competition as a seedling, they'll kind of all struggle. It's almost like misery loves company. You won't have one that just thrives and the rest kind of struggle. You're going to have all 3 struggling or all 4 struggling. And that's one really unique thing with peppers that I find is a little bit different when starting seeds. And so I will typically only start 1 to 2 seeds per cell, never more than that, because otherwise I know that there's going to be struggles, especially in a cell this small. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all will try growing peppers. I know that peppers are something that gardeners do struggle with, but they're fairly simple. And oh, and then one final thing that I think I would touch on. A lot of you ask about fertilizer. Are these getting fertilizer? The answer is yes. Now we've changed our tone on this in recent years because I've just kind of had recent findings, and I've learned from my own experiences that while the plants are first germinating, they're not using any fertilizer at all. But these seeds are going to be growing in this soil here for probably, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks. And at that point, they're going to produce adult leaves. They're going to begin to leaf out and grow, and that requires nutrients to do that. And so we've added an all-purpose fertilizer to help aid in that plant growth. And that's just what we have done. Now we use Trifecta Plus, that's our fertilizer of choice, but use whatever fertilizer you have on hand. It's a nice all-purpose fertilizer, so it's going to give them nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, but it'll give them nutrients as soon as they need it when it's ready. And we've just mixed that in. We've actually mixed that into the seed starting mix at a ratio of right around 1/4 cup to 1 gallon of soil. So if we were to take like a gallon jug, fill it up with soil, in that gallon, we've also added about 1/4 cup of our fertilizer so that the plants do have nutrients when they need it. And I think that makes a huge difference as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all learned something new. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments box down below another seed that you struggle to grow, because I'd like to make this maybe kind of a little mini series, because I know that starting from seed can be one of the most rewarding things, but if it's a tricky seed to sprout, it can also be one of the most frustrating things. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting MIgardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care. Bye.